The night it happened wasn't anything special. At least, it didn't start that way. It was one of those quiet, midweek evenings in Seattle, gray skies, light drizzle tapping against the kitchen window, and the soft hum of the dishwasher filling the silence. Emma sat scrolling through her phone at the table, half watching a video, half thinking about how bored she felt. Across the counter, her husband, Daniel, was closing his laptop, tired eyes behind his glasses. He'd been working late again as usual. Same routine every night. Emma didn't even look up when he sighed. "You didn't eat?" he asked, glancing at the untouched pasta on the stove. "I wasn't hungry," she replied flatly. He hesitated, then walked over, picked up his plate, and started serving himself. No argument, no frustration, just that quiet kind of tired you can't fake. The kind that comes from years of trying. For a few minutes, neither said a word. Just the clinking of forks and the faint rain outside. Then, out of nowhere, Daniel said it, the sentence that would echo in her mind for days. "You don't appreciate anything." "Emma, not me, not what I do, not what we have." She froze, looked up from her phone slowly. "Excuse me?" "You heard me," he said, voice calm but firm. "You treat this house like a hotel. I come home, I try to talk, you're on your phone. I cook, you don't eat. I plan something, you cancel. I'm done walking around feeling invisible." Emma scoffed. "Oh my God, Daniel, are we really doing this again?" "You're being dramatic." He gave a small, sad laugh, the kind that doesn't reach the eyes. "Yeah, maybe I am. But you know what's worse than being dramatic? Feeling like nothing you do matters." She didn't reply. She just went back to scrolling, pretending she didn't care, even though something about the way he said it made her chest tighten. After a long pause, he pushed his plate away. "I'm staying at the condo for a few days," he said quietly. Her head snapped up. "What, you're leaving?" "Just need space." "Don't worry, I'll still cover the bills, the groceries, all that. You don't have to lift a finger." Like always, that last part, like always, hit harder than she wanted to admit. But instead of showing it, she rolled her eyes. "Fine, do whatever you want." He stood there for a second, as if hoping she'd say something else. Anything, but she didn't, and so he grabbed his keys and walked out. The door clicked shut, and the silence that followed felt different. For the first few hours, Emma was fine. She turned up the TV, ordered takeout, poured herself a glass of wine. She even FaceTimed her friend, laughing about how dramatic Daniel was being again. But later that night, when she went to bed, the emptiness hit her. The other side of the bed, cold. His phone charger gone. No faint sound of typing from the living room. No late-night coffee smell, just silence. Stopped by the second day, the house felt too big, too quiet. She caught herself waiting for his text, even though she'd sworn she didn't care. But it never came. Instead, what came was memory after memory. Flashes of the little things she'd ignored. How he used to make her coffee just the way she liked it. How he'd warm up her car on cold mornings. How he'd pause his own work to fix something she broke. How he'd say, "You good?" when she got quiet, and she'd snap back, "I'm fine," just to end the conversation. Now, no one asked if she was good. No one noticed when she wasn't. By the fourth day, she started leaving her phone face down, waiting for it to light up. It didn't. When she walked into the kitchen, she saw the half-burned candle he'd lit days ago. The one she'd never thanked him for. Its scent still lingered, vanilla and cedar wood. His favorite. Something inside her cracked. She sat at the table, staring at the empty chair across from her, whispering to herself, "He's not really gone. He'll come back." But deep down, she wasn't sure. That night, she couldn't sleep. Every creak in the house sounded louder, every thought harsher. And for the first time, Emma felt something she hadn't felt in years: regret. She opened her phone and scrolled through old photos. Vacations, dinners, anniversaries. In every one of them, Daniel was smiling at her like she was the only person in the room. And she barely smiled back. A lump rose in her throat. She whispered, "You were right. I didn't appreciate anything." Her voice broke on the last word. That was the night Emma decided, if he ever came back, things would be different. She'd cook his favorite meal. She'd say thank you. She'd listen. But more than anything, she'd make him realize she wasn't the same woman who let him walk out that door. Because love, she finally understood, wasn't about who stayed, it was about who changed. And Emma? She was about to change in a way Daniel would never forget. It had been 10 days since Daniel left. 10 long, painfully quiet days. Emma had stopped counting after the 5th. But the silence in the house didn't let her forget. It was everywhere, in the empty coffee mug that used to be his, in the untouched side of the bed, in the faint scent of his cologne that still clung to his jacket hanging by the door. At first, she thought he'd text. He always did. Even after their worst fights, there was always a "You okay?" or "Let's talk," but this time nothing. Not a single message, and that hurt in a way she hadn't expected. For the first few days, Emma told herself she didn't care. She told her friends she was enjoying the peace, that Daniel just needed time to cool off. But when the nights got quiet and the TV couldn't drown out her thoughts, she started realizing something brutal. Daniel wasn't the one who needed space. She was the one who had pushed him away. The next morning, she woke up earlier than usual. The rain outside had stopped, sunlight spilling gently across the kitchen counter. The house felt like it was waiting for her to do something, anything, for the first time in years. She made coffee. Not the instant kind she always grabbed on her way out. She brewed it the way Daniel used to. Fresh ground beans, slow pour, a touch of cinnamon. The smell filled the room and she felt her chest tighten. It was like he was there again, leaning against the counter, teasing her about how she never made her own coffee. She smiled through the ache. "Guess I'm learning," she whispered. That day, Emma decided she was done waiting. If Daniel had needed space to see what he had, she was going to use that same space to remember who she was and who she wanted to be. She cleaned the house, not because she had to, but because she wanted to feel proud of it again. She cooked dinner, real food, and sat down at the table alone, forcing herself to eat without her phone, without distractions. It wasn't about him anymore. It was about her finally showing up for herself. A few days later, she joined a local community cooking class, the same kind Daniel had suggested months ago, the one she'd laughed off. Now, as she stood in that bright kitchen with strangers, learning to make handmade pasta, she felt alive, nervous, but alive. She wasn't thinking about what Daniel would say or do. She was thinking about how good it felt to try. Still, every time her phone buzzed, her heart jumped. But it was never him until one night. It was. Her phone lit up at 11:42 p.m. Daniel. Her breath caught. For a long second, she didn't move. Then she swiped open the message. "Hey, just wanted to grab some stuff from the house tomorrow. Is that okay?" Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. She wanted to say, "Of course, I miss you," but instead she typed, "Sure, I'll be out." But the spare key's where it always is. She stared at the message, her heart pounding. Then she set her phone down and whispered, "Let him see what he left." The next morning, she woke up early. She made the bed perfectly, put out fresh flowers and cooked breakfast, not for him, but because she wanted the house to feel like home again. When Daniel arrived, she wasn't there. But everything in that house spoke louder than words. The clean counters, the warm smell of coffee, the vase of tulips on the table. He walked through quietly, looking around like it was the first time he'd ever seen it. Something about it felt different, softer, warmer. He noticed the small note on the fridge in her handwriting. "Thank you for the mornings you made. Better than coffee." He just stood there, holding the note, and for a second he smiled. That evening, Emma came home after her class, half expecting nothing. But there, on the counter, was a small message scribbled on a piece of paper in his handwriting. "House looks good. You look happy. Hope you're doing okay." She traced the words with her fingers and whispered, "Not yet, but I will be." And that night, something shifted inside her. She didn't cry. She didn't beg. She didn't even reply. Instead, she opened her laptop and applied for the marketing job she'd been too scared to go for last year. The one Daniel always encouraged her to try, because this time, her revenge wasn't about making him jealous or hurting him back. It was about becoming everything he once saw in her and everything she'd forgotten she could be. Weeks passed. Daniel didn't text again, but he started watching her stories. The ones where she was laughing at cooking class, walking by the pier, or sharing sunsets with a quiet caption, learning to love the little things. He never liked them, never commented, but he saw every single one, and that was enough for now, because Emma knew. The best kind of revenge isn't loud. It's silent, graceful, and undeniable. It's when you stop chasing what left and start becoming what they'll never find again. That night, she poured herself a glass of wine, curled up on the couch, and looked out the window at the city lights. Somewhere out there, Daniel was probably wondering if she missed him. And she did. But not in the same way. She missed what they could have been, not what they were. And for the first time since he left, Emma whispered a truth she finally believed. "I don't need you to come home, Daniel. You just needed to see what home looked like without you." Daniel hadn't planned on staying away this long when he first left. It was supposed to be for a few days, a short break, a breather. He thought Emma would text, maybe apologize, maybe say she missed him. She always did, eventually, but this time, silence, a cold, unfamiliar kind of silence. At first, he tried to convince himself she was just being stubborn, that if he waited long enough, she'd break. But instead, the days turned into weeks, and the distance started to feel real. To real. Every night at the condo, he'd come home to the same emptiness. No sound of laughter from the living room, no faint scent of her perfume drifting down the hallway. No sarcastic little comments about how he worked too much. Just quiet. He thought he wanted peace. But peace, he realized, wasn't supposed to feel this lonely. One evening, While he was making himself dinner takeout again, he opened Instagram. He hadn't meant to. His thumb just instinctively tapped her name. Emma. Her profile popped up instantly. The first thing he noticed was her smile. It wasn't forced anymore. It wasn't the let's just get through this smile he'd gotten used to. It was real. There she was at a cooking class, laughing with strangers. There she was at the pier, wind in her hair, holding a cup of coffee like she actually tasted it this time. And under one post, a soft sunset photo, her caption read, "Sometimes you don't realize how much noise you made until you sit in silence long enough to hear your own heart." Daniel stared at that line for a long time. He didn't hit like, he just locked his phone and sat there staring at the wall, feeling something deep and unfamiliar twist inside his chest. Guilt, regret, loss. That weekend, he drove past the house. He told himself it was just to grab more of his stuff, but he didn't stop the car. He slowed down near the front gate and saw her through the window, cooking, humming to herself, hair tied up messily, wearing that soft gray sweater he'd bought her. Years ago, he couldn't remember the last time he'd seen her look so peaceful, and that's when it hit him. She wasn't waiting anymore. He drove away before she could see him, gripping the steering wheel tighter than he meant to. That night, Daniel couldn't sleep. His mind replayed their last argument, her blank face, his angry words. "You don't appreciate anything, God." He'd said it out of frustration. But now, it felt like a prophecy. The next day, he texted her, "Hey, just checking in. How are you?" No reply. He waited hours, then sent another, "I was thinking maybe we could talk sometime." Still nothing. For the first time in years, Daniel felt what she must have felt all those times he'd been too busy, too tired, too distracted. Invisible. Meanwhile, Emma saw the messages. She stared at them for a long time, her fingers hovering over her phone. A month ago, she would have answered in seconds. But not now. She'd made herself a promise, no more chasing what doesn't choose her. So she left his messages on read, poured herself some coffee, and went back to her painting, something she'd started doing again. She wasn't trying to make him jealous. She was just done losing herself to someone who only noticed her absence. Days passed before Daniel tried again. He called this time. She didn't pick up. He left a voicemail, voice low, hesitant. "Hey, I just wanted to say I saw the house the other day. It looked nice. You look happy. I'm glad. I really am. I just, pause, I miss you, more than I thought I would." When Emma listened to that message, she didn't cry. Not because it didn't hurt, it did, but because part of her finally understood. Regret always comes too late. She pressed delete. That night, she met her friends at a cozy little rooftop bar downtown. For the first time in forever, she laughed without pretending. There was no weight on her shoulders, no fear of saying the wrong thing. Just her, unfiltered, free, and finally alive. And across the city, Daniel sat in his empty condo, scrolling through photos of her again. Every post was a reminder of how much he'd taken for granted. He'd thought leaving would teach her a lesson. Instead, it taught him one, the hardest one of all. That when you walk away from someone who loves you, thinking they'll chase you, sometimes they just learn how to live without you. A few nights later, Daniel showed up at the house. He didn't text, didn't call. He just knocked, heart racing. When Emma opened the door, he froze. She looked different. Not just her hair or her clothes, but her entire presence, confident, calm, unbothered. "Hey," he said softly. "Hey," she replied. Polite but distant. "I didn't think you'd answer," he admitted. "I almost didn't," she said with a faint smile. They stood there in awkward silence, the air heavy with everything they hadn't said. "I just wanted to see you," Daniel said finally. "I've been thinking about us." Emma tilted her head. "Us," he nodded. "I made mistakes, a lot of them. I shouldn't have left the way I did." Her eyes softened, but only for a moment. "You didn't just leave the house, Daniel. You left long before that." He opened his mouth, then closed it. He couldn't argue. She was right. "I miss what we had," he said quietly. She smiled, small, sad, but certain. "I miss what I thought we had," and that was the line that broke him, because for the first time he saw it, the version of her he'd ignored. The version that had waited too long for him to notice. She stepped back and said gently, "Take care of yourself, Daniel," and before he could reply, she closed the door, not out of anger, but out of peace. Daniel stood there on the porch for a while, listening to the sound of her footsteps fade. He wanted to knock again, to say something, anything, but he knew it wouldn't change a thing, because the woman behind that door wasn't waiting for him anymore. She was finally waiting for herself. 2 weeks passed after that night on the porch. Daniel hadn't stopped thinking about it. The way she looked at him, calm but unreachable. There was something in her eyes that haunted him, not anger, not hate, but something worse. Acceptance. He kept replaying her words in his head. "You didn't just leave the house, Daniel. You left long before that. He wanted to tell her she was wrong, that he'd always cared. But every time he tried to build that argument in his head, the memories didn't back him up because the truth was, she was right. He'd been drifting for years, working late, zoning out, assuming she'd always be there. He'd thought providing was the same as loving. But love wasn't money or groceries or bills paid on time. Love was noticing. And he hadn't noticed her for a long time. Now he noticed everything. He noticed her absence in the mornings, no soft footsteps in the hallway, no sound of her humming while making coffee. He noticed how quiet his phone stayed. He noticed the ache in his chest every time he passed her street and didn't stop. One Friday evening, he decided he couldn't do it anymore. He texted her again. Would you want to grab coffee sometime? Just to talk. For a moment, he didn't expect an answer. But an hour later, his phone buzzed. Sure, Sunday, 11 a.m. at Blake's. He stared at that message for a long time, heart pounding like it was their first date again. Sunday came, and he got there early. The same cafe where they used to spend lazy weekends years ago. When she walked in, the world seemed to slow down. Emma wore a soft beige coat, her hair loose around her shoulders, light makeup, nothing dramatic, but she glowed. Not the kind of glow you get from someone else, the kind you get from finally finding peace. Hey, he said, standing up. Hey, she smiled. You look tired. He gave a small laugh. You always did have a way with compliments. They sat. For a moment, neither spoke. The silence wasn't awkward, just heavy. Daniel broke it first. So, you've been busy, huh? She nodded. Yeah, I started painting again. I've been doing these local art pop-ups. It's been fun. He blinked. Wow, I didn't know you still painted. That's because you stopped asking. It wasn't bitter, just factual. And that stung even more. He nodded slowly. I deserved that. Emma smiled softly. I'm not trying to hurt you, Daniel. I just stopped trying to protect you from the truth. That line hit him hard. He looked at her across the table, realizing he wasn't talking to the same woman he left. This was someone new, someone sure of herself, calm, self-contained. So why did you agree to meet? He asked quietly. She took a sip of her coffee, then met his eyes. Because I wanted to see if the man I fell in love with was still in there somewhere. He swallowed hard. And what do you think? She hesitated, then said softly, I think he's still trying to find himself. And that's okay. I had to do that too. Daniel's throat tightened. I miss you, Em. I miss us. I know I screwed up. I know I said things that hurt. But I thought maybe. He stopped, struggling for words. Maybe we could try again? For a long moment, she didn't answer. Then she smiled gently. You know what I realized after you left? I was waiting for you to appreciate me. But I never stopped to appreciate myself. I thought your attention would fix the emptiness, but it never did. He looked down. I never meant to make you feel that way. I know, she said softly. But you did. And now that I've finally found peace, I can't go back to being the woman who waited for someone to notice her. Daniel exhaled, defeated. So that's it? You're just done? She shook her head. No, I'm grateful. Because you leaving forced me to wake up. You taught me what love isn't, and that's how I finally learned what it is. He wanted to argue, to fight, to promise he'd change, but something about her voice told him it wasn't his turn to speak anymore. The silence between them wasn't angry now. It was final. Emma looked at him one last time. You know, what's funny, she said. You were right that night. I didn't appreciate anything. Not you, not what we had. But now that I finally do, it's too late. Daniel's chest tightened as she stood up. Take care of yourself, she said gently. And Daniel, next time you love someone, don't wait for them to leave before you notice them. She left before he could say anything. He sat there long after she was gone. Her coffee cup still warm across from him. He reached out, tracing the rim of her cup with his thumb, whispering to himself, I noticed too late, outside. Emma walked down the street, sunlight spilling across her face. For the first time in years, she didn't feel heavy. She didn't hate him. She didn't wish him pain, because the sweetest revenge wasn't watching him suffer. It was knowing he'd never find peace until he learned what he lost. And she'd already found hers. Emma didn't expect peace to feel so strange. It crept in slowly like morning light seeping through curtains after a storm that had lasted far too long. Every day since that coffee with Daniel, she woke up earlier, made real breakfast, and played music while getting ready for work. It wasn't about filling the silence anymore. It was about owning it. Her small apartment smelled like vanilla and paint. She turned the second bedroom into a studio canvas leaning against the wall, splashes of color drying on her jeans. It was messy, alive, hers. Sometimes she'd catch herself humming, then laugh out loud. The sound still startled her. Happiness had a different tone when it wasn't borrowed from someone else. One Saturday morning, she got an email from the local art center. Your submission has been selected for the summer showcase. "Congratulations, Emma Reed." Her hands trembled as she read it twice. It wasn't a big deal to the world, but it was to her. It was proof that the version of Emma who'd once felt invisible was now being seen. She called her friend Mariah and squealed like a teenager. They planned a small celebration that night, wine, takeout, laughter echoing across the balcony. At one point, Mariah looked at her and said, "You're glowing, girl." "What changed?" Emma smiled. "I stopped apologizing for existing." They clinked glasses. Later, when everyone left and the city lights shimmered below, Emma sat alone on the balcony, scrolling through old photos. She didn't do it to torture herself anymore. She just wanted to remember. There was Daniel at Pike Place, laughing with a coffee in his hand. There was her birthday dinner, his arm around her shoulders. The images didn't hurt the way they used to, they just felt distant. She whispered, "We were good once," then deleted the album. Closure wasn't always dramatic. Sometimes it was just hitting delete and meaning it. A few days later, she ran into Daniel's sister at a grocery store. They chatted politely. Emma asked about the kids, the job. Then came the hesitant question, "He talks about you, you know." Emma's heart skipped. "Does he?" "Yeah, says he didn't realize how much he'd lose." Emma smiled gently. "He's realizing. That's good. He misses you," the sister added softly. "I know," Emma said. "But I don't miss who I was when I was with him." The woman nodded, understanding more than she said. When Emma walked out of the store, sunlight hit her face. She felt weightless. That conversation might have crushed her once, but now it only confirmed what she already knew. The power had shifted. Weeks rolled into months. Emma's art show came faster than she expected. The night of the opening, the gallery buzzed with voices and camera clicks. She wore a simple black dress, hair pinned loosely. A silver bracelet Daniel had given her years ago, one last reminder turned symbol of transformation. Her paintings hung across white walls, each one telling a piece of her story. There was one that drew the most attention, a half-open door, golden light spilling through, and a woman walking away from the shadow inside. When a journalist asked what it meant, Emma smiled. "It's about leaving places that no longer see you." And realizing the light was waiting outside all along, people clapped softly. Cameras flashed. And in the back of the room, unnoticed until that moment, Daniel stood watching. She didn't freeze or panic. She simply met his eyes across the crowd and gave a polite nod. He looked proud, maybe a little broken, and for the first time, she felt no urge to fix that. After a while, he approached. "These are amazing, Emma." "Thank you," she said, voice calm. He gestured to the painting of the open door. "That one. It's us, isn't it?" She paused, then replied, "It was. But now it's just a story I outgrew." He smiled sadly. "I deserve that." She shook her head. "You don't deserve punishment, Daniel. You just deserve to learn." "We both did," he nodded, looking around the room filled with her success, her laughter, her light. "You really made it." "I'm making it," she corrected. "One day at a time." He hesitated. "I'm happy for you, I know," she said softly. "And I hope you find what you're looking for." Then someone called her name from across the room, another artist. Maybe, or a potential buyer, and she excused herself with a warm smile. Daniel watched her walk away. Realizing he'd finally seen the full picture, the woman he once took for granted had become someone he could only admire from a distance. Later that night, when the lights dimmed and the guests left, Emma stood alone in front of her favorite painting. She ran a finger along the frame and whispered, "You did it." For the first time, she didn't mean we. Outside, the city hummed. A soft breeze carried the faint smell of rain, the same kind of night it had been. When he first said those words, "You don't appreciate anything," she smiled. He had been right once. But not anymore, because now she appreciated everything: the pain, the loneliness, the lessons, the freedom. Her revenge had never been about hurting him. It was about becoming untouchable in the quietest, most graceful way. She locked the gallery, slipped her hands into her coat pockets, and walked toward the glow of the streetlights. And as the rain began to fall again, it didn't feel cold this time. It felt clean. 6 months later, Seattle was deep into autumn. The air carried that quiet chill that made coffee shops feel warmer and memories feel sharper. Emma sat by the window of her favorite cafe, the same one where she used to wait for Daniel after work. Now, she came here for herself, sketchbook open, pen dancing lazily across the page as rain streaked the glass beside her. She wasn't sketching people anymore. She was drawing places, tiny corners of peace she'd discovered in her new life. A street musician near Pike Place, a child feeding pigeons, the empty park bench she sat on every morning. Each drawing felt like a whisper, "You made it here. You survived yourself." The bell above the cafe door chimed. Emma didn't look up immediately until she heard a familiar voice. "Still order the same vanilla latte?" Her pen froze. Daniel stood a few feet away, a hesitant smile tugging at his lips. He looked different, tired, softer somehow. His eyes held that weight of someone who'd seen too much of their own mistakes. Emma exhaled slowly. "Hey," she said. He nodded toward the empty seat across from her. "Mind if I sit?" She thought for a second, then closed her sketchbook. Sure, he sat down carefully, as if afraid he might break something invisible between them. For a moment, the only sound was the espresso machine hissing in the background. "You look good," he said. "Thanks," she replied, smiling faintly. "You too," he laughed under his breath. "That's generous." They sat in silence for a beat, comfortable, unfamiliar silence. Finally, Daniel leaned back. "I came to your show last month. Didn't think you noticed me." "I noticed," Emma said. "You were standing by the painting of the open door," he nodded. "I wanted to say something, but you looked free. And I didn't want to mess that up." Emma looked out the window. "You didn't, you couldn't," he smiled sadly. Fair enough. They talked for a while about work, old friends, life. Daniel told her he'd moved closer to his sister's place, picked up running, started therapy. There was no dramatic apology, no desperate plea. Just quiet honesty. "I kept trying to fix things outside of me," he said softly, staring at his coffee. "Turns out, the thing that needed fixing was me." Emma nodded slowly. "That's how it usually is." He looked at her. "You really don't hate me, do you?" She smiled, warm but steady. "No, Daniel. I don't hate you. I did for a while. But hate's just another way of holding on." His throat tightened. "I deserved worse, maybe," she said. "But I deserved peace. So I took it." He blinked a few times, absorbing that. They stepped outside together after finishing their drinks. The rain had stopped, leaving puddles that shimmered under the streetlights. Daniel shoved his hands in his jacket pockets. "I still think about us. A lot." "I know," she said quietly. "Do you ever think about what if?" Emma smiled. "Sometimes. But I think more about what is. And right now, what is feels good." He nodded, looking down at the wet pavement. "You really found yourself." She tilted her head, thoughtful. "No, I built myself." There it was again, the quiet strength that once intimidated him but now humbled him. They reached the corner where their paths would split. Daniel hesitated. "Can I ask you one last thing?" "Sure. Do you ever miss me?" Emma took a breath, her eyes soft. "I miss who we wanted to be. But I don't miss who we were." That landed like truth usually does, quiet, heavy, and undeniable. He smiled through it, small but genuine. "That's fair." She reached out and gave his arm a gentle squeeze. "Take care of yourself, Daniel." "You too, Emma." And with that, they turned opposite ways. No dramatic music, no final glance, just two people walking into different versions of peace. That night, Emma returned home to her apartment, kicked off her shoes, and lit a candle. The faint scent of lavender filled the room. She poured herself a glass of wine and stood by the window, watching the city glow beneath her. She thought of everything that had happened, the shouting, the silence, the loneliness, the rebuilding. And for the first time, she didn't wish any of it away. Because all of it had shaped her into the someone calm, strong, and unshakably content. She whispered into the quiet room. "Thank you for leaving." It wasn't bitterness. It was gratitude. His absence had become the space where she finally found herself. The candlelight flickered against her reflection in the glass, soft, confident, at peace. She smiled at the woman staring back. "Welcome home," she said, somewhere across town. Daniel sat alone in his car outside his apartment. He replayed their conversation in his mind, every word echoing like a quiet lesson. He didn't cry this time. He just sat there, realizing this was what true consequence felt like, not losing someone's love, but losing the right to it. He whispered to the empty seat beside him, "I'm sorry," then turned the key, drove off into the night, and let the memory of her become what it was meant to be, a reminder, not a wound. Back in her apartment, Emma set down her wine, turned off the lights, and crawled into bed. The rain began again, tapping softly against the window like an old song. Only this time, she didn't feel lonely. She just felt free. And that was her final revenge, not breaking his heart, but finally healing her own.